June 15, 1944. 0430 hours. Northern coast of Saipan. The horizon is still black when the first shapes begin to materialize offshore, dark silhouettes turning slowly against the dim starlight. The sea is calm, but it carries a low, rhythmic thunder, like the heartbeat of something enormous approaching. Along the palm-lined ridge near Garapan, Captain Yoshio Kitamura of the Imperial Japanese Army raises his binoculars and squints into the darkness. He hears engines. Many engines. The sound rolls across the beach like the growl of a waking animal. Below him, half buried in sand and volcanic rock, his men crouch inside freshly dug bunkers. They grip Arisaka rifles slick with humidity, their faces streaked with the night's sweat and ash. Kitamura's own uniform clings to him, damp from the tropical air. He wipes the lenses of his binoculars with the edge of his sleeve, the gesture sharp, impatient. A few hours earlier, word had spread through their defensive line. The Americans are bringing tanks. But not the heavy brutes the Japanese officers feared. No, these were the so-called Shermans, the same machines Japanese propagandists mocked as tin can toys, rolling death traps that would melt under a single hit from a Type 147mm anti-tank gun. Kitamura had laughed along with the rest of them. He lowers the binoculars now, uncertain. The silhouettes offshore are multiplying, dozens of them. Amphibious landing craft churning toward the beach in slow, steady columns. Still too far to see what they're carrying, but the rhythm, that engine roar. You hear that? Lieutenant Hideo Nakamura whispers beside him. Kitamura nods. He hears it. You would hear it too, a deep metallic rumble, like thunder trapped inside a steel drum. He lifts the binoculars again just as the first landing craft gets close enough for the rising sun to catch its cargo. A blocky turret. A long barrel. Wide, muscular tracks braced for sand and rock. A Sherman. And then another. And another. Dozens. Kitamura's breath catches. A subtle, involuntary pause. His heart thuds once, sharply, like it's warning him. Below, the Japanese defensive line stirs awake, rifle bolts clicking, officers shouting orders, machine gun teams swinging their barrels toward the surf. The smell of oil and cordite begins to mingle with the salt air as men prepare for the clash they've spent months digging in for. Nakamura forces a tight smile. Just Shermans, he says, trying to mimic the confident tone he'd used in briefings. Our guns will tear them apart. Kitamura doesn't answer. He is too busy watching the landing craft drop their ramps, huge steel jaws biting into the surf. The first Sherman lurches forward, its exhaust belching smoke. From this distance he can already see the scuffed armor, the bulky hull stacked with spare track links and sandbags, the crew perched half-exposed atop the turret, confident, casual, like men stepping off a bus instead of driving into battle. The tank crashes into the shallow water, sending a sheet of spray into the air. Its engine roars as it climbs out of the surf and onto the sand. The Japanese machine gunners open fire. The Sherman doesn't slow. Sparks pepper its hull. Tracers dance across its glassy like angry fireflies. A second tank hits the beach. Then a third. The ground under Kitamura's boots begins to tremble, softly at first, then more insistently. A vibration he feels through the soles of his feet, up his legs, into his gut. The sensation of something massive moving with purpose. You said they were light? He mutters. Nakamura swallows hard. They are. But there is nothing light about the way the tanks advance. Nothing toy-like about the way their turrets rotate with calm mechanical precision. One Sherman fires. The cannon blast cracks the sky open. You can almost feel the pressure waves slam against your chest. A Japanese bunker erupts in a plume of shattered coral and burning timber. Men scatter. Some don't get up. Kitamura stares, frozen. He thinks of the intelligence reports describing the Sherman as fragile, thinly armored, likely to suffer engine failures in tropical climates. He thinks of how confidently he repeated those claims to his men. A second blast. Another bunker disappears. The palm trees sway from the concussion as if bowing to a force they cannot resist. Kitamura finally finds his voice. Signal the anti-tank crews! Bring the Type 1 guns forward! But even as he shouts the order, a sinking dread curls in his stomach. The Shermans have already fanned out, moving faster than expected, their tracks grinding coral and sand into powder. Infantry swarm behind them, U.S. Marines shouting, advancing, firing. The Japanese gunners drag their anti-tank pieces into position, scrambling under fire. A Sherman turns its turret toward them. Just the movement, slow, deliberate, makes Nakamura flinch. They're getting too close, he mutters. Kitamura says nothing. Because he suddenly understands something he never admitted before. The propaganda was wrong. The assumptions were wrong. And these toy tanks are here in numbers he never imagined. A single Sherman can be killed. Dozens arriving together? That's something else entirely. A shadow sweeps across them, another wave of landing craft, packed with armor, roaring toward the beach. Kitamura feels his mouth go dry. This isn't an assault, he whispers. This is a flood. And floods do not negotiate. They consume. The Type 1 anti-tank gun team moves fast, faster than Kitamura expects, but not fast enough to outrun what's coming for them. The crew drags the long gray barrel into position between two jagged slabs of coral rock, sweat dripping off their helmets in thick beads. The tropical heat is suffocating, a wet blanket that clings to every movement. Yet the men work with frantic precision, slamming shells into place with trembling hands. They've practiced this 100 times. But they've never practiced it under the shadow of a charging Sherman. A gunner glances up and sees it coming, a squat, sand-shrouded M4, its bow gun chattering like an angry jackhammer. Each burst kicks up geysers of dirt around the emplacement. The gunner steadies himself, squeezes his shoulder into the stock, and grips the firing lanyard. Range, 180. Elevation 0.3. The crew leader barks. The gunner yanks the cord. The Japanese cannon belches smoke. A shell screams toward the Sherman. It hits. The impact rings out like a frying pan slammed against a steel wall. The Sherman jerks, lightly, almost lazily, and keeps driving. Paint chips scatter. A faint scorch mark blooms on its frontal armor. Inside the bunker line above, Kitamura's eyes go wide. That was a direct hit, Nakamura whispers. The Sherman accelerates. The Japanese crew scrambles to load another round, but the tank is already on top of them. The 75mm main gun snaps downward with terrifying speed. The muzzle flash illuminates the rocks in stark white for a split second. The world explodes. When the dust clears, the gun crew is gone. Kitamura's heart slams against his ribs. His mouth tastes like metal. The vibrations under his boots are growing stronger now, overlapping as more tanks roll ashore, dozens, maybe more. They advance in a staggered line, each one covering the blind spots of the next. There is no hesitation. No uncertainty. The Shermans advance like they've rehearsed this exact moment. And they have. Far behind the line, U.S. Marine Tank Commander Lieutenant John Jack Buckley leans out of his turret, shouting directions over the roar of engines. His face is coated in salt spray and grit. He slaps the turret with the flat of his hand. Keep moving! Do not stop on the beach, roll straight through those gun nests. His driver nods and floors it. The Sherman surges forward with a guttural roar. From above, Kitamura watches helplessly as the American armor cuts through his outer defenses like plows through loose earth. Machine gun nests that were meticulously camouflaged are shredded in seconds. Mortar positions vanish beneath cascading debris. The palm trees that once hid their foxholes now tremble violently with every American shot. A young Japanese runner stumbles into Kitamura's command post, panting so hard he can barely form words. Captain, enemy infantry have broken the left flank. Our line is... His sentence ends abruptly as a Sherman round hits somewhere behind them. The concussion knocks him off his feet. Dirt showers down from the ceiling of the dugout. Nakamura grips a support beam to steady himself. They're dismantling everything, he mutters. Piece by piece. Kitamura feels a cold weight settle in his chest. He thinks back to the war games, the briefings, the confident senior officers who mocked American armor as soft, juvenile, unrefined. He remembers one colonel waving his hand dismissively at a photo of a Sherman during a strategy session. "A toy," the colonel said. "A child's machine. It will fold the moment it sees real fire." Kitamura believed him. They all did. Another explosion rips the beach open. This time, it's not artillery. It's a bunker, one of theirs, torn apart as a Sherman drives straight over it, its tracks grinding the earth flat. The screams that follow are short-lived, swallowed by the roar of the engine. Nakamura watches in horror. They're not even slowing down. Kitamura forces himself to breathe. "Where are the reserves?" he demands. But before Nakamura can answer, a new sound pierces the chaos, an unfamiliar metallic shriek rising from the southern ridge. It's not one Sherman. It's an entire line of them. More than Kitamura counted before. More than he imagined possible. A creeping realization crawls through him, icy and unwelcome. This is only the first wave. His throat constricts. The weight of dread is almost suffocating. He grips the edge of the bunker and whispers to no one in particular. "What kind of army brings this many tanks to an island?" But he knows the answer. An army that intends to stay. A shell whistles overhead. The blast is close, too close. Dust cascades from the ceiling. The beam above Kitamura's head cracks with a sharp wooden snap. Nakamura looks up, terrified. The bunker might not hold. And outside, the tanks keep coming. The bunker roof shudders again, this time with a long, groaning crack that shakes dust loose in a steady rain. Kitamura instinctively ducks as a second fracture splits across the overhead beam. Somewhere outside, a Sherman engine growls closer, its RPM climbing as it pushes through debris and mangled earth. "Sir, this position won't hold," Nakamura warns. He doesn't need to. The walls themselves are speaking. Every vibration feels like a countdown. Kitamura grips his katana hilt, more a habit than a decision, and stumbles out of the bunker, into the raw daylight and roaring chaos. The heat hits him instantly. So does the smell. Burning palm fiber. Scorched metal? Cordite. And beneath it all, the sour, unmistakable scent of fear. The sky above Saipan is turning a hazy gray, smoke from a dozen fires mixing with the relentless Pacific sun. Tracer rounds zip overhead like angry red needles. American naval guns pound the inland ridges with rhythmic brutality, slow, methodical, crushing. Kitamura scans the battlefield. What he sees makes his breath hitch. The Shermans aren't just advancing, they're coordinating, covering one another, rotating turrets in flawless arcs. Infantry cling to their sides, hopping off only when the tanks halt to unleash a new volley. U.S. Marines flow around the armor like a tide, rifles raised, movements precise and terrifyingly practiced. A Japanese Type 97 Chiha tank attempts to counterattack from the tree line. It edges forward, turrets swinging, engine whining. For a moment it looks brave, valiant. And then 3 Shermans spot it. 3 turrets swivel. 3 barrels rise. 3 shots. The Chiha disappears in a blossoming orange fireball. Its turret lifts off the hull, flipping once before crashing into the brush. Kitamura feels the heat of the explosion even from the ridge. Nakamura watches the plume of smoke spiral into the sky. "Our armor can't stand up to them." Kitamura doesn't reply. His mind is racing, calculating, panicking. The manuals said the Chiha could fight a Sherman with proper positioning. Ambush tactics. Flanking maneuvers. But this battlefield offers no such luxuries. The Americans are forcing open the terrain, flattening it, erasing cover with high explosives and tank tracks. A runner skids to a halt beside them, chest heaving. "Captain? The 2nd defensive line has fallen. Lieutenant Morita is dead. Commander Abe is pulling back to the eastern ridge." Nakamura grabs the soldier by the arm. "How many casualties?" The man's eyes dart wildly. I don't know, too many, there are tanks everywhere." A thunderous boom interrupts him as a Sherman shell detonates against the ridge, knocking all three men to the ground. Rocks and ash cascade down the slope. Kitamura's ears ring, disorienting, nauseating. Through the ringing, another sound pushes in. The grinding, crushing clatter of tank tracks on stone. They're getting closer. Kitamura drags himself upright. His legs feel weak, struggling beneath the weight of a truth he can no longer avoid. They miscalculated. They underestimated the enemy's industry. Their numbers. Their resolve. A low rumble passes through the ground. Then another. And another. Nakamura turns pale. That's too many engines. Kitamura looks toward the beach. The fog of smoke thins just enough for him to see the impossible. A new wave of landing craft opening their ramps. More Shermans. Fresh, undamaged, engines roaring as they slice into the surf and climb onto the sand. It feels unreal. Like watching an unstoppable machine generate more pieces of itself. Kitamura's throat tightens. This can't be all for one island. Nakamura shakes his head. It isn't. This is how the Americans fight now. The young runner beside them suddenly stiffens, eyes widening in horror. Captain, look! A Sherman has climbed halfway up their ridge, nearly impossible terrain. And is still advancing. Its tracks throw bursts of volcanic sand into the air. The tank commander, standing half exposed in the turret, spots them and drops back inside. The turret begins to rotate. Slow. Deliberate. Unavoidable. Kitamura's pulse spikes. He grabs Nakamura's sleeve. Fall back! The three men break into a sprint, stumbling over shattered coral as the Sherman's gun locks onto their position. The air feels electric, charged, like the moment before lightning hits. A sharp mechanical click. A breath of silence. Then, a deafening blast hurled against the hillside, swallowing everything in smoke and flying earth. Kitamura dives behind a boulder, heart hammering, ears ringing so violently he can't tell if Nakamura shouted something or if he's imagining it. The ground trembles again as the Sherman fires a second round, this one closer. Too close. He presses himself low, choking on dust, lungs burning. The ridge is collapsing. Their line is collapsing. And the Shermans aren't slowing. A silhouette emerges through the smoke, American infantry advancing behind the tanks, rifles raised. The enemy is moments away. Kitamura clenches his jaw. He has only one thought left. If this is how they attack Saipan, what will Luzon face? January 9, 1945. Lingayen Gulf, Luzon. Dawn. The humid morning air hangs heavy over the coastline as the sun rises behind a bank of rolling smoke. The sea is alive with movement, landing craft surging forward, destroyers firing in disciplined rhythm, and above it all the low, mechanical growl that every Japanese soldier on the island now recognizes with a tightening gut. Shermans. Coming ashore again. Major Takeo Yamaguchi of the 23rd Division crouches inside a slit trench overlooking the coastal plain. He grips his field glasses tightly enough to whiten his knuckles. His uniform, once crisp, is stained with sweat, dust, and weeks of sleepless anxiety. The stench of diesel and sea salt mixes with the sickening perfume of burned-out villages scattered across the plain. He can already see them, green silhouettes rolling out of the smoke like beasts emerging from a forest fire. But the sight doesn't shock him the way it shocked Kitamura months earlier on Saipan. Yamaguchi knew this was coming. He'd read the after-action reports from the Marianas. Reports from surviving officers describing the M4 Sherman as an unstoppable tide, a hammer against which flesh and steel are equally meaningless. And one phrase that stayed with him for nights on end. Hopeless. Yamaguchi lowers the binoculars, jaw tightening. Hopeless. He hates the word. Hates what it implies. But as the Shermans accelerate across Luzon's beaches, he can't stop the memory of Captain Kitamura's final report from Saipan, a desperate, barely legible note recovered months after the island fell. They come in dozens. Then more dozens. Killing them is meaningless. Where one falls, replace it. An explosion snaps Yamaguchi back to the present. A battery of Japanese field guns opens up from the tree line, firing shells that streak across the plain and burst dangerously close to the advancing American armor. For a moment, just a moment, Yamaguchi feels a flicker of hope. The first American tank in line jerks as a shell rocks its side. A plume of dust erupts. The men around Yamaguchi raise their heads. "Direct hit?" one whispers. But the dust settles, and the Sherman keeps moving. It shakes itself like a bull annoyed by a fly, turrets swiveling smoothly. A second battery fires. A third. A dozen blasts tear across the beachhead. Only 2 Shermans stop. Both belching smoke, but not burning. The others, dozens, continue onward, fanning out across the rice fields. A cold sweat beads on Yamaguchi's brow. Behind him, an older sergeant mutters under his breath, voice trembling. "They are not machines, they are demons." "No," Yamaguchi corrects softly. "They are factories. American factories. Rolling toward us." The ground begins to tremble, subtle at first, then stronger, steadier. The vibration passes up through Yamaguchi's legs and into his bones. Every Sherman on Luzon seems to be moving in unison, gears grinding, engines snarling, tracks ripping through earth. He raises the binoculars again. The Americans aren't rushing this assault. They're advancing with confidence, as if they already know the outcome. Infantry jog beside the tanks, using them as mobile shields against Japanese small arms fire. Engineers trot behind, ready to tear down obstacles and repair disabled vehicles in minutes. The sky above is filled with the distant hum of American aircraft, P-47 Thunderbolts orbiting lazily overhead, predatory and unchallenged. Yamaguchi watches as a Japanese anti-tank ambush, his ambush, springs from a camouflaged ravine. Soldiers rush forward with satchel charges and bamboo-mounted mines. For one brief second, the Shermans appear vulnerable. Then the lead tank fires a canister round. It's as if the air turns to razors. Shrapnel and steel pellets shred through the ambush line, dropping men in silent heaps. The survivors scatter, only to be met by the rhythmic hammering of .30 caliber machine guns sweeping the ravine like lantern beams of death. The entire ambush, weeks of preparation, dies in less than 30 seconds. Yamaguchi grips the trench wall, his breath shallow. "There is no stopping them," he says quietly. One of his lieutenants, pale and shaking, turns to him. "Major, what are your orders?" The truth curls in Yamaguchi's throat like smoke. What can he order? The Shermans push deeper into the plain, crushing the irrigation dikes beneath their weight, plowing through sugarcane fields and abandoned carts. Their tracks leave wide, merciless scars across the landscape, signatures of inevitability. One tank smashes through a cluster of nipa huts, their walls collapsing like paper. Another rolls straight over a disabled truck, flattening it with a groan of twisting metal. American infantry scatter around them in a coordinated dance, rifles scanning, voices shouting. The battlefield is becoming a machine itself. And every moving part belongs to the Americans. Yamaguchi stares at the approaching armored columns, Shermans, half-tracks, scout cars, all moving in perfect harmony, and feels something he has not felt since the war began. A hollow, sinking emptiness. Not fear. Not rage. Not even despair. Clarity. He finally understands. The Japanese Empire cannot match this. Cannot outbuild it. Cannot outlast it. These tanks, these toys, are the expression of an industrial giant fully awake. And they are rolling straight toward Manila. A single, terrible thought tightens around his heart. We have already lost. We just have not been killed yet. Yamaguchi swallows hard. Fall back to the secondary line, he orders. The lieutenant hesitates. Sir, the secondary line won't hold either. Yamaguchi's voice cracks. I know. Behind him, the rumble grows louder. Because the Shermans are coming. And nothing on Luzon is ready to stop them. The retreat toward the secondary line is chaos long before it becomes an organized movement. Yamaguchi pushes through clusters of exhausted soldiers strung along the narrow jungle path, faces haggard, uniforms torn, ammunition nearly gone. Many of them don't even look up as their commanding officer passes. Their eyes are fixed on the ground, bodies moving on instinct alone. The distant thunder of tank engines follows them like a predator's steady heartbeat. The jungle offers shade, but not comfort. Humidity clings to every breath, thick as syrup. The air buzzes with insects and drifting ash. Somewhere to the west, artillery booms, American guns adjusting forward, methodical, relentless, herding Japanese forces inward like cattle in a burning pen. As Yamaguchi reaches the secondary line, a ragged chain of makeshift trenches and earthen revetments, he spots Colonel Masaru Ichino's, one of Luzon's senior field commanders, directing the regrouping troops with clipped, furious gestures. Ichino's turns as Yamaguchi approaches, his jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. "Major," he growls, "tell me you stalled them." Yamaguchi can't bring himself to lie. "They broke through everything. Our ambush didn't slow them for a minute." Ichino's curses under his breath, gripping the hilt of his service pistol. His eyes burn with a mixture of anger and disbelief, an officer who spent years drilling the doctrine that the Japanese spirit could overcome any material shortfall. But the battlefield around them is rewriting doctrine by the minute. A terrified corporal runs past, shouting, "Tanks in the tree line! They're flanking us!" Ichino's face goes pale. "In the trees? Impossible! Those machines can't maneuver in dense jungle." But Yamaguchi knows better. He saw the reports from the Pacific Islands. Saw the diagrams proving Shermans could smash down saplings, crush roots, and rip through undergrowth like bulldozers wearing armor plating. The jungle is not protection. It is fuel for their advance. "Colonel," Yamaguchi says quietly, "they can." A sudden crack tears through the air, a tree trunk exploding as a Sherman round slices through it. Splinters rain down like wooden shrapnel. Soldiers scatter, diving into trenches. Somewhere nearby, a man screams as machine gun fire stitches across the underbrush. Ichino's grabs Yamaguchi's shoulder. "Get our anti-tank team up here!" "They're already firing," Yamaguchi replies, voice hoarse. Indeed, at the far end of the line, a team of Japanese soldiers huddles behind a log barricade, aiming their last Type 1 guns into the thick foliage. A Sherman emerges through the trees. Branches snap against its hull. Leaves rain from its turret as it plows forward, unstoppable. Its hull is streaked with mud, vines tangled in its suspension, as if the jungle itself tried to hold it back and failed. The gun crew fires. The shell hits the Sherman's side. Dirt erupts around it. Birds scatter. But the tank keeps coming. It turns its turret, slow, inevitable, toward the gun crew. Yamaguchi doesn't breathe. The Sherman fires. The blast throws bodies and debris into the air. Smoke curls upward in a pitch-black column. A private beside Yamaguchi whispers tremblingly, "Sir, our guns do nothing." Yamaguchi feels his stomach twist. He knows the truth. Their weapons aren't outdated. Their tactics aren't flawed. Their soldiers aren't cowards. They are simply fighting a machine designed by a nation that can replace every loss 10 times over. A second Sherman crashes into view beside the first, followed by a third. The tanks grind through the underbrush in a staggered assault line, firing in coordination as if guided by a single mind. Ichino stares stunned. "They just drive through everything." Yamaguchi nods. "It's more than firepower. More than armor. It's momentum. American industrial, logistical, and mechanical momentum turned into steel and motion. The Japanese line fractures. Some soldiers fight. Some retreat. Some simply collapse in place, unable to comprehend the scale of what's bearing down on them. A runner arrives breathless, mud-stained, shaking. "Colonel! American armor pushing down the eastern ridge. We're surrounded!" Ichino's closes his eyes. Pain flashes across his face. "Surrounded, already?" Yamaguchi grips the rim of the trench. This is the moment the officers on Saipan described, the precise turning point when the mind shifts from tactical calculations to a single terrible truth. There is no version of this battle we can win. He looks back toward the advancing tanks. Sunlight catches the metal of the lead Sherman. Its turret rotates again, searching for its next target. The engine growls louder as it picks up speed, crushing roots, branches, and bodies beneath its tracks. They aren't just winning. They aren't even struggling. The tanks roll forward with the indifferent, patient force of a planet's rotation. Unstoppable. Unafraid. Unexhausted. Yamaguchi wipes the sweat from his brow. This line will fall, he says. Ichino's doesn't look at him. He doesn't need to. It already has, the colonel murmurs. A distant horn blares, American infantry signaling a push. The engines roar again. And Yamaguchi understands. Luzon is not experiencing a battle. It is witnessing the collapse of an entire military ideology, one crushed beneath the tracks of machines once mocked as toys. The secondary line disintegrates not with a dramatic final stand, but with a quiet, sickening unraveling, one trench at a time, one gun pit at a time. By late afternoon, the once-ordered defensive position has become a patchwork of isolated pockets, each one firing without knowing if anyone is still fighting beside them. Smoke drifts like low fog across the jungle floor. The air tastes of gunpowder and burning sap. Every sound is muffled by the dull, constant thunder of American armor. Major Yamaguchi crouches behind the twisted roots of a massive banyan tree, its trunk gouged by shrapnel. Around him, a thin cluster of survivors reloads rifles with trembling hands. They are soaked in sweat, dust, and the raw terror of men hunted by something faster, stronger, and increasingly close. A loud metallic squeal cuts through the forest. A Sherman's turret. Turning. Yamaguchi peers through the foliage. There it is, a hulking M4, its hull glistening with mud and the crushed remains of jungle vegetation. It's moving slowly now, careful, deliberate, like a predator testing the ground with each step. The sun glints off its periscope. Its bow gun spits short bursts into the trees. The men around Yamaguchi shrink back instinctively. Then another tank emerges. And another. 3 Shermans form a rough triangle, covering each other as they push deeper into the broken line. American infantry move between them with disciplined ease, rifles raised, eyes scanning every shadow. A sound escapes one of Yamaguchi's corporals, a thin, involuntary whimper. He clamps a hand over his mouth, eyes wide with shame. It's not cowardice, Yamaguchi whispers. It's instinct. The corporal turns to him, breathing hard. Sir, how do we fight this? Yamaguchi doesn't answer. Not because he refuses, but because he no longer knows. A rustle snaps through the underbrush. One of Yamaguchi's sergeants rises from a crouch, hefting a satchel charge. His expression is twisted with a grim kind of resolve, the determination of a man who has decided to trade his life for a moment of meaning. He dashes toward the nearest Sherman, feet pounding on the jungle floor. Wait! Yamaguchi calls out. Too late. American infantry spot the movement first. Gunfire erupts in rapid, slicing bursts. The sergeant stumbles, spins, collapses into the dirt, the charge detonating harmlessly beside a tree, showering the forest with leaves and burning splinters. The nearest Sherman adjusts course. Its hull shifts slowly to the right. Its bow gun angles downward. The machine guns open up. The earth around Yamaguchi erupts. His men dive for cover. Dirt pelts their helmets, leaves and insects rain from the canopy above. A young private cries out as a burst catches his arm, spinning him into the roots of the banyan. Yamaguchi presses himself against the earth, heart hammering so hard it feels like a fist inside his chest. This is it. This is the moment every officer fears, the moment he understands his command is no longer a fighting unit, but a group of doomed men running from inevitability. Nearby, a lieutenant clutches his helmet and mutters over and over. There must be a gap! There must be a gap! Yamaguchi's hand closes around his map pouch. He's carried it since Shanghai. It once felt like power, strategy, control. Now it feels like a relic of another world. A shout echoes from deeper in the jungle. American armor on the riverbank! They've cut the road! The voice is desperate, fading, swallowed by the forest. Yamaguchi forces himself to stand. His knees tremble, but he puts one foot in front of the other. He steps over roots, over bodies, over fallen branches as his men look up at him with hollow eyes. Major, a corporal asks, where do we go now? He opens his mouth. And stops. There is nowhere. The Shermans have closed every path, left, right, inland, coast. Their advance is not a line but a tightening vice. These machines don't just push. The jungle thins as Yamaguchi and what remains of his unit push southeast, just as he ordered. But the farther they go, the more he realizes the truth. The battlefield isn't moving with them. It's closing around them. By dusk, the forest floor glows dimly with the orange reflection of fires burning miles away. Smoke drifts between the trees in thin, bitter ribbons. Every few minutes, a distant explosion shudders through the ground, sending a ripple of panic through the exhausted column of men. They march in silence. Not because stealth is possible, stealth died hours ago, but because no one has the breath or spirit left to speak. A private collapses without warning, face first into the dirt. Two others lift him, trying to coax him to his feet, but his legs are done. His head lolls. His lips move soundlessly. Yamaguchi kneels beside him. The boy is barely 17. Sir? He whispers, voice trembling. The tanks, are they coming? Yamaguchi hesitates. He wants to lie. He wants to give the boy something, anything, to latch onto. But a new sound answers for him. A low metallic thunder. Soft at first. Then louder. Growing. The jungle canopy trembles as if a storm is approaching. The tanks are coming. The boy closes his eyes. I knew it! His breathing stops a moment later. The two soldiers look to Yamaguchi. Sir, we can't even bury him. The ground is shaking. He nods. He feels the vibration, steady now, unmistakable. Not artillery. Not small vehicles. Tracks. Heavy ones? Plural. They move on. As they descend into a shallow ravine leading toward the river valley, the trees grow sparse, the ground opening into a broad, root-choked corridor. Visibility improves, just enough for Yamaguchi to see an ominous glow to the south. Searchlights. American searchlights sweeping the treeline like fingers feeling for a pulse. And there, moving just behind the light, he sees silhouettes. Shermans. Dozens. His breath catches. They're not alone. Another line of tanks advances from the west, moving in parallel with the searchlights, forming a jagged wall of steel that seals off the horizon. The battlefield is shrinking. Like a tightening noose. Nakamura's old fear returns, echoing in Yamaguchi's mind. They're not coming from one direction. They're coming from every direction. Behind him, a lieutenant whispers, Major, they're corralling us. It's true. This isn't a pursuit. It's not even an assault. This is containment. The Americans are shaping the battlefield, hemming the Japanese into smaller and smaller pockets. Every Sherman that appears is another brick in a wall with no gaps. A shout rings out from somewhere down the ravine. Enemy armor at the river! They blocked the crossing! Yamaguchi's heart sinks. Cut off. Again. He climbs a fallen log to see for himself. Through the tangle of branches, he spots the riverbank, and sure enough, American armor is lined up along the far shore, their silhouettes outlined by the glare of floodlights set up along the water. The tanks are angled to cover every approach. Every bend. Every pebble. Even the river is a trap. Behind him, soldiers murmur anxiously. What do we do? What do we do? Yamaguchi forces his voice steady. We hold this ravine. We make a stand here. A murmur of disbelief ripples through the survivors. One corporal stares at the approaching armor and whispers. Against that? Yamaguchi grips the man's shoulder. We hold because we are here. Not because we expect to win. A strange calm settles over the group, as if accepting the truth lifts a weight they didn't know they were carrying. Then the jungle ahead begins to glow brighter. The Shermans are getting closer. Their engines grow louder, the mechanical chorus echoing off the ravine walls. The ground vibrates steadily now, each footstep a quiver through the dirt, each tank an earthquake with a steel heartbeat. One of the soldiers closes his eyes. "Sir, they're surrounding us on purpose." Yamaguchi exhales. "Yes. Why?" He looks toward the searchlights, their beams slicing the darkness in slow sweeps. To end this quickly. A new sound rises above the engines, American infantry shouting orders, their boots pounding through the underbrush. Flanking teams? Closing the last pockets. The ravine suddenly feels too small. Too narrow. A coffin made of earth and smoke. And as the first Sherman noses into view at the far end of the ravine, turret already elevating for a shot, Yamaguchi knows the final truth of the Pacific War's late years. This isn't the story of a single tank, or a single island, or a single battle. This is the story of an empire being crushed beneath a machine it once dismissed as a toy. The Sherman spotlight snaps on, blinding white. Yamaguchi shields his eyes. The gun barrel centers on him, and the ravine fills with the roar of a charging engine. The spotlight burns into Yamaguchi's eyes like a miniature sun. The jungle around him vanishes into a silhouette, just black outlines, trembling leaves, and the blinding white gaze of the machine that has hunted them across miles of shattered terrain. The Sherman growls forward, its tracks churning the earth into mud. Its turret pivots, slow and steady, onto the cluster of Japanese survivors boxed into the ravine. The massive 75mm barrel levels itself like a pointed finger, accusing, unblinking. Behind the tank, American infantry advance in disciplined rows, weapons steady, movements economical and confident. They don't rush. There is no need. Their armor has already broken the enemy's spine. A young Japanese private beside Yamaguchi whimpers and drops his rifle. Another follows. And another. The forest is filled with the soft, heartbreaking sound of weapons hitting the ground. Clatter. 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 Not in defiance, but in resignation. Yamaguchi lowers his pistol slowly. His hand trembles, not from fear, but from the weight of a realization he has been fighting since the war began. Bravery is not enough. Skill is not enough. Even sacrifice is not enough. Not against this. The Sherman halts 20 meters away, its great bulk filling the ravine. Steam rises from its engine deck. Mud clings to every rivet. Its bow gun lowers a few degrees, just enough to warn them that any sudden move will end in fire. Yamaguchi lifts his hands. Not high. Just enough. The American tank commander emerges from the turret hatch, helmet strapped, goggles coated with dust. He studies the scene for a long moment, Japanese soldiers kneeling or standing with hands raised, too exhausted to flee, too surrounded to fight. He doesn't smile. He doesn't gloat. He simply nods and waves his infantry forward. The American troops fan out, rifles ready but not shaking. Their voices are firm, calm, calling out commands in English the Japanese soldiers barely understand. "Drop your weapons! Hands up! Sit down, don't move!" And then, a crashing noise from the ridge above. An officer. A lone Japanese lieutenant, face streaked with blood, uniform torn to ribbons, bursts from the tree-line with his sword raised high. A final charge. A final refusal. A final denial of reality. "No!" he screams. "We still fight. We are not." His voice drowns in the burst of an American Thompson. He falls, sword first, sliding down the slope. Yamaguchi watches in pained silence. The lieutenant wasn't brave. He was broken. Unable to accept what every man here now knows. Their officers didn't lose to the American soldier. They lost to the American system. To the factories in Detroit. To the refineries in Texas. To the shipyards in Philadelphia. To the ports unloading new tanks faster than the Japanese could destroy them. The Sherman is merely the shape that system took. The officer's body lies still in the mud. His sword rests beside him, its edge dulled and stained. Behind him, the forest glows with the scattered fires of a defeated army. One of Yamaguchi's corporals looks at the tank, at the endless weight of American industry bearing down on them, and whispers the words officers on Saipan wrote almost a year before. "Sir, these tanks, they make you feel hopeless." Yamaguchi nods. "Not the tanks," he murmurs. "What stands behind them?" The Americans move through the ravine, disarming and escorting the survivors with efficient calm. No cruelty. No triumphal swagger. Just the solemn duty of men used to victory. The Sherman's engine finally throttles down, rumbling into a low, steady idle. It sits there, a giant exhaling after a long chase. Yamaguchi looks at the machine for a long, silent moment. Once, Japanese officers mocked it. Called it a toy. A flimsy box of bolts. Unworthy of respect. Now? It is the face of inevitability. The shape of a war Japan was never equipped to win. As he's led away under guard, Yamaguchi gives the tank a final, weary nod. Not in salute. Not in admiration. But in acknowledgement. The Sherman didn't defeat Japan alone. But it symbolized the force that did, relentless, industrial, and impossibly vast. And for the first time since the war began, Yamaguchi lets the truth settle fully into his bones. The war is over. And it ended long before today.